Imane Khelif, the Algerian boxer who's at the centre of it all, cried, "I am a woman," after easily winning another bout to guarantee a medal. And this story has dominated an awful lot of the coverage of the Olympics. And this morning in the papers, there's also another story involving a similar situation with the Taiwan boxer who's known as Yu-ting. She won against Bulgaria's Svetlana Staneva, and when the Bulgarian woman lost, she held her hands up in the shape of an X, which apparently was due to show an XX gesture for female chromosomes. So the row's not really going away. Let's find out what Mara thinks. Mara, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. It's a very strange story, this really, isn't it? Because depending on who I speak to, the fact that Imane was born a woman still doesn't convince them that she's suitable to fight in women's boxing because of her superior strength and her sort of superior kind of technique, partly down to the fact that she may have been born a woman, but she has basically male chromosomes.
You used the phrase born a woman. All the evidence shows that these two boxers have what is known as a DSD, which only affects male athletes. All the evidence points to that. They have both failed sex tests twice at two different laboratories. Both those tests indicated XY chromosomes.
Right.
The DSD, which seems likely, is male babies. They fail to develop normal male genitals. So when they're born, they're mistaken for female, they're registered female, they grow up believing they're girls, but then they undergo normal male puberty. There's a good information out there. If you look at Quillette.com, article by Dorian Coleman, Dr. Emma Hilton, Dr. Ross Tucker, they've all put out good information about this. I encourage your listeners to read it.
Okay. So you're saying she wasn't really born a woman then?
Well, Khelif, the two boxers may believe themselves to be women, but they have male physiology is what all the evidence points to. They are XY, they are male, but mistaken for females at birth. And if you undergo male puberty, you have massive advantages compared to females. In boxing, the difference in punching power is 162%. But this is extremely unfair, and it's also extremely unsafe for female boxers. And I have to say that the IOC have caused this row. They have not done sex testing. They refuse to do sex testing. They were warned by the IBA in June last year that these athletes had XY chromosomes, and they did nothing. They've been lying in the press conferences, making claims like women have testosterone in the male range. This is completely untrue. So the blame really should be directed at the IOC, not at these two boxers. Yes. They've been allowed to compete despite being male in the female category, which is completely wrong and unfair and unsafe. And, you know, I congratulate the Bulgarian boxer yesterday who, after the bout, went, you know, saying, yes, I am an XX woman.
Yes, I'm looking at that picture now. Yeah. No, it's interesting what you're saying. I mean, I think you're right, because, you know, for me, the fact that they were both denied entry to the World Boxing Tournament, which took place a little while ago, would suggest that, you know, that was right and this is wrong.
Yeah, well, they weren't denied entry. They were disqualified because coaches were complaining. So based on, you know, coaches' complaints, tests were done. They were found to have XY chromosomes, both of them in two separate tests. So, you know, you have to get back to sex categories in sport.
Well, of course, they call that degrading, don't they? The IOC said we don't want to go back to sex testing because that's like going back to the Dark Ages.
This is completely untrue. When female athletes were asked, the overwhelming majority of them favoured sex testing. It's a simple cheek swab. I think what the IOC are referring to there is genital checks, and I agree that is degrading. This is totally unnecessary. Sex can be established by a simple cheek swab, and you only have to do it once because you cannot change your sex. And so the IOC must go back to sex testing, because if males are in the female category in any sport, it is unfair and unsafe. 4 female boxers now have lost to these 2 male athletes, and it looks like, you know, they've both now got at least a bronze medal. They could get silver or even win. This is an absolute travesty for women's sport.
Yeah, it really is. It might come as no surprise to you. We discovered over the weekend that one of the people responsible for the IOC was one of Keir Starmer's best men.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real question of leadership here. We've seen the Bulgarian president the Italian Prime Minister come out and defend their female boxers who were put up against these male athletes. I want to see leadership from Keir Starmer and Lisa Nandy. They need to step up and ensure that the female category in the UK is for females only. And, you know, whatever they can do on the world stage, great. It's also worth noting that both these two boxers, after being discovered to have XY chromosomes, one did not appeal to CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The other appealed but withdrew its appeal partway through. If they were genuinely female, they would have pursued those appeals to the end and proved to the world that they are female. The IOC has rubbished those tests, but the IOC could prove that they are female by doing sex tests on them right now.
Yeah.
And the two boxers themselves could voluntarily do sex tests and prove to the entire world that they are female. You know, you have to ask yourselves, why have they not done that? The IOC could put an end to this row with sex tests. You have to ask yourself, why are they not doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question.